Now, this article reviewed the best research-supported practices for effective literacy programs today, and it outlined 5 main areas of concern: word study, fluency, vocabulary, comprehension, and motivation. This article first discusses the high demand of new effective literacy techniques for adolescents. Today, about 2/3 of 8th to 12th graders read below grade level, and 32% of high school graduates graduate and they are not prepared for college-level English composition courses. So the main issue with these students is that they simply cannot comprehend the material that they read. So, I'm going to talk to you about the 5 main areas and go a little bit more in detail. Because if you can implement these 5 main areas into your literacy program, then according to this article, you'll have better results from your students and they'll be more prepared when they graduate from high school. So the first one is word study. Now, word study involves the study of words, teaching prefixes, teaching suffixes, and root words, and teaching students to break words apart that they don't know or that they can't pronounce, teaching them to just break it apart and take it syllable by syllable, or looking at the prefix of it, looking at the suffix of it. Studying root words is a great tool to teach students when it comes to word study, because if they know the root word of a word but they've never seen that word before, chances are they'll be able to figure it out. And this is fluency. Fluency has to do with being able to read a sentence and not struggle with pronouncing the words, and to develop fluency in students, you can use numerous techniques that this article mentions, and that is to use repeated oral readings and studying words before you read them, picking out the words that might be a little difficult for them and that you might anticipate them struggling with, and teaching those words, how to pronounce them, how to identify them and categorize them, and what they mean is great to work on fluency. That helps with fluency. Another one is each student must read on their reading level. That's very important. If a student is reading something that's not on the level that they're reading at, it can be very discouraging, and their fluency is going to be choppy and not consistent, and so comprehension will not be reached if they cannot fluently read the text that you give them. Also, provide more practice opportunities for struggling students. So you have those students that you know are, when they read aloud, you can tell that they're struggling with reading the words off the page. Well, obviously, if they're struggling doing that, they're not going to reach comprehension. So you need to pull those students aside and give them extra practice and give them more time to read aloud to you, and or read aloud to the parents, or just do everything that you can to get them to read more. And that is pretty much it for fluency. If you read this article, it goes into more in-depth techniques to develop fluency. So I recommend looking at that. The next one is vocabulary. For teaching vocabulary is, after you teach the vocabulary, post the vocabulary words in the room. The more these students see these words and see the definitions, the more likely they are to remember them. So it's important that you do that. Provide student-friendly definitions and antonyms and synonyms for these students. You know, if you look up a definition to a word, it might be a really lengthy, complicated definition. Simplify that. You need to simplify that definition as a teacher so that your students can comprehend the definition so that they can comprehend the word. If they can't comprehend the definition, they're not going to remember the meaning. They're not going to know the meaning of the word. So it's important as a teacher to do that. And like I said before, put words into context. You're teaching a new word that is going to be in this chapter that you're about to read. Take it from the sentence from the book like we did with our books that we've been teaching in the class and use that. Use word games and concept maps. This is a great motivation technique, which we'll talk about in a second. But getting them excited to learn new vocabulary words is really important too. Also, incorporate new vocabulary in your everyday language. So as a teacher, don't use the same old words. Use the new vocabulary words that you've been teaching with your students. Use those in the classroom. That's very important for them to hear you use it, so then they can apply it later on. The next one is motivation. And it's another really important one to involve when making your literacy program. So provide goals for reading. If students have a goal for reading something, they're much more likely to pay attention and to read it intensely. So provide goals for your students and use interesting text. Look through the text that you are about to give your students, and if it bores you, it's going to bore them. So find stuff that's interesting and new and exciting and fun to get them motivated to read it. It doesn't have to be super complicated. It can be something fun, and they'll enjoy reading it, and they're still learning. So promote social interactions with the text. The more the students read and then talk about what they read, the better off they are remembering the information and reaching deeper comprehension. Also, create an interest in new learning, like I just said before, and expand choices and options. So expand your options. Give students the choice to read this book or that book. Give them a choice to read that article and this article, or just give them choices so that they feel like they're in charge of their own learning. And last but not least, increase collaborative learning. So, an idea that you could do is to have them present new information that they've learned themselves to the class and have them teach the class. So those are all great motivational things you can do with your students to reach comprehension. Comprehension is the last one. And comprehension cannot be reached if you don't have all of these down. And comprehension involves activating prior knowledge, provides structured text connection activities. So if they're about to read a story about an amusement park, activate that background knowledge so that they can connect with the text and be more engaged when they read it, and that will help with comprehension. And also teach them to monitor their own comprehension, and that involves teaching them to slow down when they read and reread what they don't understand. Teach them to ask and generate questions. The more that they comprehend, the more questions they're probably going to have. So having them saying, the more questions you come up with, the better off you are. Use graphic organizers because you're going to have a lot of visual students in your class. So using graphic organizers is a great tool, such as Venn diagrams, concept maps, story maps. Also, organizing information into using mnemonic strategies, and teaching students to note take as they're reading is a great one too. Teaching them to observe text structures, such as if the expository text that they're about to read is a cause and effect, a compare and contrast, description or list, problems or solution. If they can identify that, they're better off. They can better organize the information that they're reading. And also to study story grammar, such as setting, character, conflict, climax, resolution. That also helps them organize the information better. And teach students to extract the most important information that they read, and that goes along with note-taking too. If they can pick out those important key details in sentences, that's a great comprehension strategy. Also, implement metacognition instruction. Basically what this is just teaching them to think about their own thinking. If they know why, or know the strategies that they are using to comprehend the material that they're reading, this is great for them to use in order to understand what they're reading.